Welcome to Take One Whiteboard, where we are capturing in-the-moment conversations with thought leaders on practical solutions towards getting better results. Take one means it is literally one take, unrehearsed and spontaneous. Participants trust the energy of the moment and feel free to explore and share their thinking, often in rapid exchanges with layering of ideas. This can feel unconventional, but the resulting discoveries are candid and honest. We do our best to leave it unedited. I am Stuart Morse, and thanks for tuning in. Well, welcome back to Take One Whiteboard. We're here with John Bracamontes, and we'll see what he has on his mind. So tell us about John.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So John, former skater, guy that likes to draw, guy that likes to code. There's a million things I can tell you about that. But love to design, love to build stuff. That's what I really love to do, is just build. So I fell into doing that digitally, but creating anything. I talked about skateboarding and built ramps, and I actually worked in some architectural classes in the past and did some design work for homes.
So what's your main flow of work right now?
The main flow of work, so digital marketing, what we're calling high ROI content marketing, but it's using SEO, it's using social media, using paid search and email marketing to just be combined focus and effort to drive in new leads and nurture those leads into buying clients.
Very good. Yeah. So what do you, in that respect around SEO and marketing and a lot of the digital world, what are you seeing right now? What's top of mind for you?
Yeah, so SEO, so that really ends up being the point, the crux of like where we start. So just like any marketing company, we end up talking to who we're going to work with, and we say, tell us how you're different. What are the goals and things you want to do? But we take that all as guidance and we bring it into SEO. So the reason
around their goals, right?
You got it, exactly.
Goals and
so their goals, the things that their company does and sells, we're using SEO as that initial ground of research. That's where we dig in first.
Okay.
The reason we love SEO so much is it's that playground. It's that uninhibited ask anything place where people go and they'll ask the craziest things. I mean, they'll ask things as straightforward as, how do I get someone to buy my services for my business? To, if I use this shower gel, is it going to make my skin turn green? They'll ask anything.
So if I hear you correctly, this thing is just a wide open environment. Yeah. I mean, it's not like you're gonna, like if you're selling your business and you're gonna go, I'm gonna go down this street or I'm going to this group of businesses. I mean, this is wide open, and it's wide open all the time.
Exactly, you got it.
Okay, so it's just, so you really got to understand what you're trying to do. Right?
Yes.
You've really got to understand your inputs.
Yep.
So tell me more about this. You said first thing is do research. What are you really doing? I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah, so the process looks something like this. A company has goals and they have services that they provide, and it may be that they want to, let's focus on one thing. Let's say a tractor company wants to sell, or it's someone who sells tires for people who own tractors.
Okay.
But they sell a number of tires and they can't move these specific model, certain size for a specific model. And they say, how can we sell more of these? So we go out and we're going to find what the marketplace is searching specifically about those tires and those models. So it may be.
So you're really finding out when people are starting to search, how do they find these things?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so that's your action that happens out here in this digital environment.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So it's really about this digital piece.
Yeah. I'm
going to write that again up here. So it's really about being in this digital world that's out there.
Yeah.
And people are out there and they're searching.
Yep.
And so you're trying to find, when they're out actively doing that, how do they find those specific things that your company does?
Exactly.
Okay, so what comes out of that?
So what comes from that are specific questions. So we actually take this, and this is where, the perspective on SEO today is that it's not only the search engines anymore. The search engines are a reflection of the marketplace because of the ability to search.
So this just shows you patterns.
Yeah. Yep.
Patterns of behavior.
Exactly.
So the search is just one thing, but it shows you patterns of behavior. Okay.
Yeah. So we use that, and we'll identify. So implied, most of what's happening on these search engines today are questions. how do I get to somewhere? What do I need? How do I do this? They're questions.
Okay,
So
interesting.
Even a very brief term such as, tractor tires, it's implied there's a question behind that, but they're not being granular in their search at that point. But we'll find where people do ask very specific questions. But we'll use this to then filter further research. So we use social media. We move to that.
So this gives you some filters.
Exactly.
Or so some parameters, I should say.
It
really gives you
qualifies
it kind of gives you some parameters.
Yep.
To then and then that gives you you can then develop filters.
Yep. And it's more, at this point, it becomes more of a macro exercise where we're looking for higher volume opportunity based on what we found. What questions did we find? And, on a scale of 1 to 10, you have a lot of people asking this pattern of question and fewer people asking this pattern, but all of them present opportunity. So we need to do something with that set. We need to find out what is actually meant. What are people trying to do when they look for these things and ask these questions?
So within this you're trying to define kind of an ecosystem around this product.
Yep.
Would that be fair to say?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So, and then around all this kind of lives within this, this ecosystem around the product. What are people, the environment that people are starting to create for that?
Yeah.
So then they got questions, that gives you parameters, you start developing filters. And then once you kind of define that, where do you go from there?
So then we take it to the next level. Ends up we use social media. So we'll use tools. We'll use the search engine in combination with looking for social. So Quora, as an example, is a question and answer site that typically has very robust answers from leaders within industries. But we'll use social media to then take this macro set and find this more qualitative question and answer session around a topic. So if it is a specific tractor tire, what we'll find is someone may ask one of these questions on a forum or on a social platform, and then we'll see a dialogue that happens between a number of people who found it and engaged on that. So they say, all the problems they found with that tire, how the surplus, the supply, the issues they found with specific retailers. So we get to see all of these. What we're doing is we're validating that this is a real question or real problem to be solved in the marketplace. And then
you're validating it out here.
We're validating with social media.
So that's interesting. Okay, so your first sweep is to go, let's find out how people are looking.
Exactly, yeah.
What, they're walking around turning over wet leaves.
Yeah.
And then you pick up the chatter around that.
Yes.
So, all right, so you build this macro set of kind of what's going on, and then you're looking for the kind of the social chatter around it. And then that social chatter, what does that help you see again?
Well, what it does is it helps us identify granularity within that macro set that you wouldn't otherwise be given from Google. So Google being any of those that are providing keyword sets only gives so much. It's got to show enough volume for them to feel it's worth, because for them it's all about money.
So
right?
does you said Google is one of your places to go here. Are there other? I mean, do you go to like Bing or these others?
Bing and Moz, and there's some other keyword sets.
But Google's the
main
behemoth,
exactly.
Yeah, you've got Google that helps you do this, and then around this you have all these other, kind of Bing and etc.
Yeah,
right.
So this ends up being what you'll find here. An example would be, okay, we've got model XYZ tire that we're looking into here, and then we found conversations happening about that tire, and we found the lifespan of the tire, or we found these 3 retailers are a great place to buy from, and then we see comments against that where they say yes, 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 or here's the issue we've had with this specific model.
So now you're getting granular, but I also heard you say something else. You're also getting ratings. I mean, it's you're people are starting to put a metric around this chatter.
Exactly.
So now you're also getting some metrics in regards to rate this, rate that.
100%.
Okay.
So we'll take that and then we'll bucket it. So you can think of.
So just like you did here, questions, parameters, develop filters. You're going to do the same with this.
Yep.
Similar, and So you'll bucket it. What does that mean?
So it would be, I'll simplify it here to say, now we'll identify and say, here are questions that people are asking, and that those questions, there may be two different types. There may be questions about the quality, and then questions about the price. And then there would be the metrics, and let's say that comes into validating those who are selling that tire. And let's say we find
So
that's
would it be fair that you're starting to create a matrix?
Yeah.
Around what, certain types of questions, and then, within a metric.
Yep.
And then you're creating this matrix of types of things that they're asking.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then that basically, looks very similar to this actually, and it gets filtered once again back through the search engine. So now you
vet it.
Yep.
Vet it again, and you bring it back up into the ecosystem. And so on this arrow, when you bring it back up to you say you vet it, what is?
So it's looking for the specifics that have shown opportunity. So we found macro opportunity. We've narrowed it down to some micro opportunity, and that was the vetting, that was the clarification, and it's setting a content strategy that we then have. The reason we bring it back here is to understand how then the search engines parse those specific buckets of topics.
Oh, I see. You've got to run it through.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're essentially doing kind of this, and it gets more and more granular.
Yep. And
so you're coming. Actually, I should draw that in a different way, probably, but you're kind of narrowing this funnel. Well, it's kind of like the old traditional sales funnel, I guess, where you're coming and bringing this thing down, but your vehicle is. Both this dance between social media and the search engine.
Exactly. Because they're both playing and pulling these things together. Very regularly we'll find a granular topic that we're going to research to see how Google presents it. And that's where SEO gets into this split between desktop and mobile and localizing results versus personalization on IP. So there's all these things to consider, but we'll look and find that this specific question may actually return the result from the social media conversation that we found as that validation filter. So now when we turn it back into Google, we find, wow, that's the number one result. So we really know that that's important.
So you're really, you say, validating.
Validating it.
And getting more clarity.
Yep. And by getting that, we're able to develop content and a content strategy based on the findings of how these specific topics are presented in the search engine, to then say, we're going to write against this. Are there gaps? We'll do competitive research to find out who else is talking about this other than this social media. Do any of your competitors speak on this? Do any other sources such as a Forbes or someone like that just have randomly written on it? Because while they're not direct, they're indirect competitors occupying spaces.
So now, if I heard you correctly, once you do this, you've now picked up on a set, kind of a pattern, and now you go see if anybody has moved on it, or if anybody has written about it, or if anybody has publicly pushed out this type of set that you've come with. Would that then be, how does that exist then around? Are you looking for differentiation? Are you is that what I'm hearing?
We're looking for gaps. So what we just call it, so there's the marketplace gap, and then there's the competitive gap analysis, meaning you either have said something about this. So if you're the company selling this and we find that this is important, we'll look to what you've done in the past. Have you ever written on any of this, or have you ever created anything that exposes these ideas to your customers? If not, check one, you need to. And then check two is looking at the marketplace, saying your competitors are indirect competitors.
So now you take all this and now you put it against time.
I feel like I should be drawing something here. I haven't done any drawing.
Unbelievable.
I haven't done any drawing.
Well,
I'm doing that.
So, tell me about, I hear you putting against time.
Yeah.
This idea of, is basically past, present, and I guess you would even put future, you know, and the reason I was going here was, have people already done this before? Have people written about this? Have you said or done something in your past as a company around this pattern you're picking up? What's the what's the current thought leadership around this pattern that you've picked up with your competitors, and you're kind of doing a strategic analysis of the players.
Yeah, exactly.
Against this. So this is really interesting. You know, it's almost like when I hear, I mean, almost like a cultural study that you're trying to find out.
Yeah.
How does your product exist within the culture?
Yeah. And it's reminiscent of the way that,
which is different than marketing.
Well, yeah, like marketers would do this a little bit, right? They would do focus groups and ask people, but the scale that this
is culture.
exists
This
at,
is like cultural trends. It's almost like you're studying pop culture.
Yes, yeah.
It's all these behaviors around stuff, which I guess did live in marketing, but this is more. This is really almost anthropological. I mean, you're like an anthropologist.
Yes.
It's not go put a product in someone's hand. You're really understanding how they speak and act around the concept of the product.
Yeah. Well, so that kind of plays a future. I'm drawing something.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I just want to get something on the board. So there's another tool which a lot of search marketers will use, which is just called Google Trends. And what you'd be able to do is a comparative analysis between the language that people use to look for certain things. And since we're local, we know this, but you can see this very clearly with a Charter Communications, which was Spectrum, and changing their names. But you would find, so Google Trends, it would look like this. You're comparing terms. And let's just say this is 5-year span. 5 years here. So we would say compare Charter Communications to Charter to Spectrum. And so what you'd end up seeing from something like that was you'd have this high volume of Charter Communication services, but then you see this decline. And then with Charter, you'd see something like this, and then you start to see this decline. And then with Spectrum, let's just say this is like when they first initiated it, you'd see some things like this, and then you see the spike. So we're able to look at that history and say, this vocabulary is dying off. Literally, just the words that they use to identify a company or a service or a product. You can do this at a global scale, at a
so
national
those lines are the data that you bring out of this.
Yeah, yep, that's a part of it.
So this is different. So this would be like market data around, so traditional market data might be these so many units were sold, these number of items out in the thing, number of buyers, and this is you have it, the chatter around it, the behaviors, is it culturally relevant? Yeah. At this time.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
That's fascinating.
So it's exciting.
So how does what's the practicality of that coming, if I'm someone who's, running my company and putting strategies together or also just execute on my company, what's the practicality of what you're doing back to a person in that position?
Yeah, so what it ends up doing is it's creating this strategy of assets needed to put in front of these individuals who are going to be perfect for the goals you're trying to meet. So it means everything we did was in support of finding the path and then the things that we need to show to these people to get them to want to work with you. It's not necessarily manipulative. What we're looking for is what is real. These people are actually searching for the answers that you are trying to give. So let's just bring this.
So you're really able to see beyond what you see and know and be more aware than you could ever before. Yeah. Because you have a direct link into how people are behaving on these digital devices that they have in their hand.
You got it.
And what they're thinking.
Yep.
So in the past, I wouldn't know that unless someone went in and actually started to use my product and bought the product. Yeah. Now we're able to listen and watch how they just live around that.
Yep.
Not even around the product, just around the essence of what the product does.
Yes. And it goes back to, I mean, these kind of the idea, even though it's not exactly the same, is kind of like Clay Christensen's jobs to be done model. Like, can we find what it is they're actually searching for? And because the underlying tactics to get all of this to work and get in front of these individuals that's easy. That really is a commoditized job. Like, there are things to be done and it's very easy to do. It's how are you going to figure out what was best to implement?
To solve this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what assets, so once I know, if I understood you, once I understand this, even the harder thing is, so what do you do?
Yeah. Where do you start?
Yeah,
and that's the problem with this that's plagued that industry. If you say you're an SEO person, they're like, "Oh, I'll just get you to rank for what? For everything.
Just give me data."
Yeah, just give me on the search engine. Perfect.
Okay, so that's half of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and would you say it's kind of? I mean, now you take this whole thing and you say, "Okay, got it. What do I do?"
Yeah.
So how do you help people with that?
So that ends up being what I'm calling the commoditized part, but it is less effective without this. So, for example, if you have a very specific type of person, CEOs, for example, you're trying to talk to owners of manufacturing companies. Because we know that, we know where that can be targeted. So we can say, well, CEOs of manufacturing companies are self-defining that is what they are on LinkedIn, for example. So we can find that population wherever. So it could be a global, could be US, could be state level, and say how many people say they're a CEO of a manufacturing company that are in Missouri. And then we can use that as a part of this content strategy to say this message we're creating and all these things we found that they need answers to, we're putting it right in front of them. And that way we're able to deploy that message quickly.
So now I would say there's, from what I hear, there's two sides of the coin. There's like this digital. So now what do I do is and we've been talking a lot about this digital versus analog.
Yeah.
You know, and analog may, I'm going to spell it wrong now, but this, you know, on the human side.
Yeah.
So, well, that doesn't, because there's a lot of digital. So what am I going to do in the digital environment? And then what am I going to do in, you know, let me change this to physical.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm going to have some physical things that I do out there at my marketplace, or my traditional things back in my business, or when my salespeople go out to do this, or when people call and talk on the phone. But then there's this digital thing that, okay, now that we know this, we're gonna almost take this information and push it out into this macro environment, and actually start to push on this whole thing.
It's deployed.
Yeah,
that's when you really start to get huge insights from, like, you just took third-party insights, and now you get to see it firsthand. This is your stuff now.
Okay, so now once you do that, you can even get more granular with this.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna now, as I would put it here, you do this, and now you deploy it.
Yep.
Am I spelling that right? No.
I love it. As long as it looks
deploy,
right.
now you're gonna get even more granular. But you're still gonna do this, and then now you're able to, by deploying that, you're gonna even pull more people into this, because now you understand the kind of the current or stream that you want to create around the product or the service.
Yeah, and that ends up becoming just this continuous optimization model where it doesn't ever end for that reason. You continue to loop through this level of cycle. You don't have to go as in-depth every time, but you're using the same processes to find new opportunity.
Continuous optimization. Whatever. It's a whiteboard. You don't get counted off for spelling on a whiteboard.
No, you don't.
Okay, so you have this continuous optimization. So, so SEO work and actually isn't just about data.
Yeah.
It's about understanding, if I can kind of recap, it's this, from what I've heard you say, it's understanding the ecosystem which you're playing in. Mm-hmm. And by understanding that, you got to build these macro sets, and this leverage between search engine and social media. Understand the macro, and then narrow it down, and then but you're really understanding this, how people are talking and putting metrics around that in their chatter, and then validating that, and then now starting to deploy it. Mm-hmm. And now watching the data and putting it in, as you say, this continuous optimization.
Yeah.
So it's a thread of work. I mean, it sounds like SEO work should be just like you have operational excellence or SEO, marketing strategy.
Yes, yeah.
Does it live? When you're talking to leaders, where does SEO live in their business models?
Because it has that siloed vision, I guess. The visibility of that as a practice is siloed typically to, you're going to make sure that I'm found in the search engine. So it can fall into the bucket of a strategy's already been created by the executive team, a marketing team is rolling this out, so they already know this, they already have internalized and created a strategy. So they say, these are the things we need visibility around. So then you just deploy the tactics of finding the opportunity within that direction. So they've already given you very specific direction. This whole process specifically comes from someone who really has no strategy for their online. What they say is,
they have no digital deploying strategy
at all. Yeah.
They may have a traditional analog model. I mean, if it's an older business, that is not a digital business. Yep. So this is, what you, in our strategy work, well, first of all, there's a couple things that I thought that it's really interesting, this balance between strategy and culture. And you're going, not the culture of a company, but the culture in which you're playing in. Yeah. But the other piece was, when we do strategy work, we talk, okay, here's your existing strategy. Mm-hmm. What's your digital play? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how are you going to...
What's your digital play against that strategy? Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, more traditional companies, a lot of times they don't have a full vetted digital play.
Yeah, correct.
Which I would think if you're a digital company where it's on a laptop, or you would have the digital play. And I wonder, do you see, well, listen, let me flip that then. With companies that are around who are started digitally, mm-hmm. Do they flip it? What's their analog play?
You see all kinds. So I'll use, you correct me if I'm wrong here. Let's say a digital company is an app development company. Right. Many of them don't even have digital approaches yet. They're still analog. They're going to conferences and trade shows and putting a booth up, and that's their play.
Interesting.
That's their thing. Yeah.
Because so they have this digital model, and they go read a business book, and they go, get out in front of your customer, go to conventions.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
So they themselves.
So we tend to default here.
Yeah. It's the known. And it, like you said, it's in a business book. It's in curriculums. It's taught in schools, where this, for the most part, is not. And it is kind of in communication strategy, but not specifically.
So what's one of the biggest constraints that you run into when talking with leaders about this?
It is the biggest constraint. Really, there haven't been many constraints. What it comes down to is bringing them to execute on it. So for us, it's been
this piece, the deploy.
Yeah, the deployment, because it seems overwhelming. There's so many different pieces.
So their default is just see it as data.
Yeah.
Versus it's continuous optimization. So is it more about is a gap that when working with people that they may not truly understand?
That probably is if we want to call that a constraint, that is the biggest issue in
moving this forward.
Exactly. Tons of education, which is good.
Well, maybe they can watch this video. And
exactly.
Watch this video.
It's good because then we learn.
And then they'll be even more confused.
Yeah. But we learn from it, right? Like we create so many pieces of education focused material because of those conversations, which is hugely important because we get insights through those conversations too. We get perspective that we wouldn't get otherwise because we're stuck in the bubble of knowing this.
Well, and then this, I would say, continuous optimization is even on your front. I mean, this thing is, I would imagine this ecosystem is, since it is cultural, it's not static.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Exactly.
It's constantly in motion. So, you know, how fast should people move? I mean, how fast should these cycles happen?
It could, and it would be dependent on industry, right? Like it would be, you know, a lot of times executives in a specific industry can tell you what those seasons are, and you know, it ends up being. You know, I actually can't answer that. I think it's dependent.
Can you pick up on that in the data?
You definitely can. Yeah, you can definitely can. You'll see seasonality.
So that'll help you with the time.
Exactly.
Is what's your speed?
For sure.
You should be able to come out of this with. I'll tell you how fast you need to go.
100%. Yeah. You'll definitely able to see. You'll see behavioral patterns that will signal when things have changed or when they change. You can. It's almost always clear.
Right. What's the so kind of what's your words of wisdom for leaders?
Yeah. To not view this as SEO. To not think of it like that. That would be my word of wisdom. Think of it as solely insight. It's market data. It's market research. That's typically the most common anchor. It's market research, and take it as that. My word of wisdom is to not 100% only do this, because you have internal experience, you have existing customers that you've learned from and can give you insights. This is just one piece of all of that. So integrating this into your decision-making process would be the biggest word of wisdom, and to not think of it just as a practice like SEO.
So this is really about making decisions. Mm-hmm. Let's write that up there.
Yeah,
this is really about making decisions. And interesting. So you've brought this back to a lot of practical construct around this. I mean, I did not know that this was the structure of it. I think this might be what on the board do you think when you look at kind of what I've drawn out here and as we've been listening to you talk? What is there a diagram on the board here that resonates with you that says, you know, that kind of gets it?
I personally like this. I really do like this. Yeah, I mean, just showing the funneling of the granularity between the two. I'll call that the behavioral data sets. And it really, you know, taking the macro, refining it down, and deploying it as you get to that end, and then that continuous optimization. Just seeing that loop is a great representation of the continuation. I like it.
There's a drawing we've done, and I just wanted to share this with you that we came up around. This comes out of this, the Clayton Christensen work, that we have this delivery that we're doing. Yeah. We're constantly involved in this, running our business, delivering. Mm-hmm. And we've said, but there's around that is this awareness zone. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have your discoveries. So you can have things that you see out here, but until you connect it down here, innovation lives right here around this arrow. So it sounds like what you're doing is saying you really need to understand, you need to know about that other arrow that lives around it. Yeah. Because what we've talked about is this delivery arrow can change shape.
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden this thing can either get big or it can make a shift.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking, but this is more in relation to that. I think it's, you know, you may get, if you are not aware of what's going on in this other zone, someone could disrupt you.
You could, and
if you're not listening.
That's exactly. If you're not listening, and that's always been the problem.
This could happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And
all of a sudden, someone's going to come in and go, "Whoa, wait, what just happened?"
100%. And that, you know, imagine. You know, I actually can't think of the exact example, but it was about like vacuum cleaners, getting feedback on pieces that would continue to break, and they need to change their design to not have them break any longer. Where this is what is exciting in this space for me, because it really isn't about SEO. It's about behavioral and these data inputs and making decisions based on that, where the voice search or even the Internet of Things, so your Roomba who's cleaning your house runs into issues and starts to learn that I don't want to get stuck again, so I'm going to avoid that, right? So building that into products is huge, and it isn't any different than this model. There's just a different medium, right? So it's the same idea. And so what's exciting to me about it is that you can get this real-time data and be alerted to it always, and set up. You could go as far as you wanted on setting up parameters and programming everything to do what you need it to do based on findings. But
So what I heard you say is, we talk a lot about this with clients around. Is this an opportunity discussion, or is it about managing risk?
Perfect.
But it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get this data. You can manage the risk of this happening. The more aware I am, the more I can understand. I can manage the risk of my sustainability. But then I can also see opportunities. So it's about managing, but also leading.
Yeah. And that's perfect. Since we got SEO on the board, a good example for that is the technical practice of SEO ends up being the search engines modify their algorithms, and there can be very large changes or very small changes that you don't necessarily notice. But a very large change produces both of these, because your competitors may not conform or update their online
while
platforms.
watching this, you're getting information about that.
Exactly. So to cater to these updates, that's the opportunity, is to grow with it. The risk is to not die, but also you have the competitors who may or may not be as on top of it as well, so they could die in this opportunity.
So you're trying to manage this, understand that, and look for opportunities to change it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good. Making decisions, managing opportunity, risk, and deploying. And continuous optimization.
Yes. Yep. It's not a build it, set it, and forget it. Doesn't work.
Very
Works
good.
for a little bit.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. This is
Thank
good.
you very much.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you found value in what we have captured, and we look forward to seeing where you will take the conversation.